Hey everybody, this is William from the Godzilla Files coming at you today with a new book review. And today we're going to be looking at Godzilla vs. the Robot Monsters. This is the last in the series of books that came out around 1998, and overall it's pretty good. So there are a lot of things I want to talk about it, so let's jump into this review. So I want to start off with the things that I really did like about this book. And the first thing that I want to talk about is the fact that this feels like a continuation of the overall story that we've seen in the last three books. What I mean by this is that it has a very Marvel Cinematic Universe, or even at that time a Heisei Godzilla feel to it. There are things in this book that are happening because of things that took place in past books, which I think is a really cool idea. Also characters coming in and out, so overall it's a pretty exciting thing, and they do a great job world building overall in this whole entire series, and especially in this book where it all kind of comes together. Now, this isn't a book that you have to have read other books in the series, but it does help. There are things that maybe you kind of have questions about, like Ghidorah showing up in the first chapter missing a head. He fought Godzilla in an earlier book, but we kind of get an idea, and the author does give you an explanation in that chapter of what happened. So again, you don't need the other books, but it does add a little bit more in my opinion. Another thing that I like is the fact that the world is now reacting to the kaiju. So to combat the kaiju that are appearing, they're actually creating robots to fight, and US and Japan are creating Mechagodzilla, and Russia has created M.O.G.U.E.R.A. So it's a pretty cool idea. I like the fact it makes sense, like the world would have to come up with some kind of deterrent against these kaiju, and in the past books nothing has really affected kaiju, so they had to find something in my opinion. But also the thing that it does, it kind of starts a new arms race. So three countries are developing mechs. This is starting to stoke fears of a new arms race. They didn't go into it enough in my opinion, but the idea is a pretty interesting one. They kind of touch upon it here and there. As always, the kaiju details and even the mech details are really well done. Again, this is a strong point of the series. If you did not know who these characters were, you would be able to kind of picture them in your head. The detail is phenomenal, the way he describes everything, and even the way he describes the attacks of these mechs or even the other kaiju. It is all very well done in my opinion. Speaking of details, that also is going to lead me into the battle details that are in this book. I have to say the action is probably the best in the series. I think the way he describes the kaiju and the mechs work really well. You can really picture it in your head how these battles are going on. And there are some highlights in my opinion. One of them being Anguirus versus M.O.G.U.E.R.A. That's a fight that a lot of people, never thought would happen. And it's pretty well done. So, he can do one-on-one battles, but he also does a great job in team-ups as well. And we see that at the end of the book when everyone has to team up against Mecha King Ghidorah. It's not just Godzilla taking on this beast. It's also Mechagodzilla and, for the most part, M.O.G.U.E.R.A. So all that's done really well, and I do feel that the kaiju have time to shine in every battle. Speaking of kaiju, this is another book with a lot of them, and what's interesting is that they don't focus entirely on Godzilla. Godzilla's not in this book as much as you think he would be. He's in it for a couple of chapters, and now every time he is in it, it's a great chapter. They do a great job with him, but believe it or not, the kaiju that get the most attention is Baragon and Anguirus. I really did like the fact that we kind of focused on them primarily. These are two that you really don't see much of in a lot of media, so the fact that the book actually focused on them was great. Rodin's here, but I think Rodin is kind of a waste in this book. They also really build up Mecha King Ghidorah, which I think they did a great job with that. I had some issues when King Ghidorah first appeared, felt that the buildup was too long, but this one they did it right. He appears pretty quickly comparatively to his other appearance in this series, and both mechs are really cool. They are based off the Heisei era of Godzilla films, but overall I still like them as well. Alright, so I've talked about some of the things that I really enjoyed about this book, but there are some negatives, and I want to kind of jump into that now. My first one I briefly touched on. Rodin really has no point in this whole entire book. You could have taken him out and nothing would have been lost. I kind of just felt that they put him in to have another kaiju, and I think the book could have used those chapters to kind of develop characters more and also add more to the other kaiju that were in this book for the first time. Sometimes having too many kaiju is actually a negative in my opinion, and this is one of those times. Another thing is, this is another book with characters that are not interesting. I hate to say this is the biggest knock on this series, is that all the human characters are kind of forgettable. And even though I know that they were from other books, I really can't pinpoint where they were from or who they were. They're just not memorable, and I think that's a sad thing because these books needed interesting characters along with interesting kaiju. Another thing that I have an issue with is the author using scenes from Godzilla film. He doesn't use the whole scene, but he kind of uses the idea of the scene in his novels. And a perfect example of this is Godzilla comes out of a volcano, and the way he describes it, while great in detail, does really remind me of the Godzilla versus Mothra entrance when he kind of goes through the lava and up from the volcano. And while they are great scenes, you know, it's cool, I like them in the movies, but I wish he kind of came up with something on his own, because I just kind of feel like he borrowed from that, like in one of those movies, and was like, that's a really great idea, and just kind of used it in to kind of fill a chapter. So yeah, those are really my only complaints with this book. Overall, the book is great. I did really enjoy reading it. I do recommend it if you're a kaiju fan. I don't think this is a book that non-kaiju fans are going to be able to get into, and if not a fan of Godzilla in general, this book is not going to change your mind. But for fans of Godzilla, this is a great read. The whole entire series, I strongly recommend picking up if you can. I wouldn't recommend paying the eBay prices, but if you can find local thrift stores and even bookstores, they might be carrying them. So good luck trying to find them. They're definitely worth the read. Alright everybody, I hope you enjoyed my book review. Let me know in the comments below if you've read this book and what your thoughts are. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll talk to you all later.